Marks versus Sunny's Rooftop Bar. My name is Judge Maureen Jarosak. I'm assuming that everybody who's a judge, it looks like you are all muted on both audio and video. It needs to remain that way until we get to the end of the trial and you've submitted your ballots. Can the attorneys please make their appearances? Plaintiff, you can go first.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Nicholas Patel, along with my co-counsel, Mr. Burgess.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Will be representing the plaintiff, Miss Ethel Marks.
Thank you. And the defense?
Yes. Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Frederick O'Hara. I'm representing the defendant, Sunny's Rooftop Bar, in this matter. I'm assisted by my temporary second chair, Mr. Ethan Matthew. And he'll be, yeah.
What exactly does temporary mean?
My own second chair, unfortunately, wasn't able to make it at this time for this round. So my very generous witness was willing to lend me her second chair.
Okay, but we're not changing people in the middle of the round or anything.
No, we're not, just for this round.
Okay, okay, that sounds good. Do we have any preliminary matters, counsel?
We do, Your Honor. First, we'd like to clarify that pursuant to Rule 603, all witnesses are constructively sworn in.
That is correct, yes.
And that we'd like to take note of Stipulation 14, which notes that Jessica Marks was born January 20th, 2000, which makes her 19 on the date of March 24th, 2019.
I assume, defense, that you're going to agree with that?
Yes, Your Honor.
And finally, we'd like to take note of Stipulation 11, that Exhibits 1, 22, and 23 are all pre-admitted and can be used at any times.
I believe that's correct. Yes, defense?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Nothing further, we're ready to proceed.
Anything from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. We would just like to inquire as to your preferences in regards to screen sharing demonstratives and exhibits that have been admitted. Would you like us to just let you know what we're doing? Say, I'm screen sharing what's been, or exhibits 10 or whatever? Or would you prefer for us to ask explicit permission before we screen share anything?
I'm going to stand on the technicality. I would prefer that you ask me.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. With that, the defense is ready to proceed.
Thank you. Plaintiff's counsel, whenever you're ready for your opening.
Yes, Your Honor. It's March 24th, Sunny's Rooftop Bar. Jessica Marks arrives and provides an obviously fake ID to Sunny Mehta. She takes a seat at the bar and is served drink after drink after drink until she's so drunk she's slurring her words. She's stumbling down the stairs. She stumbles out of the bar, gets in her car, and drives into a ravine. A card, some words, and a flight of stairs. That's all it took for Sunny Mehta to know that Jessica Marks wasn't fit to be served. So as the plaintiff, we've brought forward a claim of wrongful death. To prove that, we must prove three things by a preponderance of the evidence. Jessica Marks was obviously intoxicated. She was still served alcohol, and that alcohol was a substantial factor in her death. Your search for the answers to these questions begins much longer before that fateful night. You see, the Sunny's Rooftop Bar was certified by the Responsible Beverage Service course to be able to recognize symptoms of intoxication and, more importantly, that you can't serve minors. because not only is it illegal, it's dangerous. On March 24th, when Jessica Marks arrived at 9 p.m., she presented an ID card to Sunny Mehta. An ID card that Sunny Mehta will tell us today didn't list height, didn't list weight, it didn't list eye color, hair color, that it was an obvious fake. Sunny Mehta still let her take a seat at that bar. Then she served her several drinks until Jessica was drunk. She was drunk enough that she was slurring her words. You'll learn that when Jessica tried to make another order, Sunny Mehta noticed this. They walked over, pointed at Jessica, and said, "I hope this one's not driving." But she still took the order. She still served Jessica Marks until she was so drunk she couldn't walk. She was stumbling down the stairs. And Sunny Mehta will tell us today that stumbling down the stairs is a telltale sign of intoxication. She still served her until she stumbled out of that bar. She got in her car and she drove into a ravine. A card, some words, and a flight of stairs. That's all it took for Jessica Marks to be clearly intoxicated, for Sunny Mehta to know that. That's why I'm going to ask, at the close of today's trial, you find Sunny's rooftop bar liable.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Mr. O'Hara, do you have an opening?
I do, Your Honor. First, can I confirm that you can see me and hear me all right?
I can see you and hear you just fine, yes.
Thank you. This is a suit based on emotion, not on evidence. Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, Mr. Patel. As I was listening to Mr. Patel's opening statement just now, it struck me that there was a gap, a missing piece of time that he didn't explain. And that's how we got from Miss Marks's crash site to this trial today. And the answer comes from all the way across the country. In Pennsylvania, it comes from Miss Marks's mother, Ethel Marks. And as you can expect, after an officer arrived at the scene of Miss Marks's death, he called Miss Marks's mother, Ethel, and she was distraught. She was devastated. That's the natural response. But it wasn't just grief that she was feeling. It was anger. And it was on that very phone call with Officer Gaskins, the same minute she learned of her daughter's death, she swore that she would do anything she needed to do to make sure the bar would be held responsible. Now take a step back from that emotional situation, and you'll see that the place where this suit was born wasn't from a place of evidence, but purely emotion. At that point, she didn't know who Sunny was. She didn't know what Sunny's bar had served her daughter. She didn't know exactly what her daughter had done leading her to that bar. All she knew is she was angry and she needed someone to blame, someone other than her daughter. She needed someone to be held responsible. So that's the emotion of today's case. And the actual evidence, well, we're going to bring some evidence. Now, that's not what defense typically does. Defense usually typically lets the plaintiff bring the evidence, but today we're going to bring something called an affirmative defense of comparative fault. Essentially, we're going to take on a burden of our own, where if you find, and only if, you find that the plaintiff has in fact met their burden, then you'll have to consider what we call comparative fault. Essentially, we're going to show to you that Miss Marks was negligent with her own health, that she didn't take reasonable care of her own health. And then if you find that both Miss Marks's negligence and the bar's actions led to her death, then you'll have to share liability between the parties. And the evidence we'll bring first will consist of things that happened before Miss Marks ever stepped foot in Sunny's rooftop bar. She already had signs of being negligent. You'll see that she was well versed in drinking and driving. You'll see that she was starting that night by saying that she was going to go hard. Going hard can mean a lot of things. It most often means drinking. Next, we're going to bring you evidence of what Miss Marks did at Sunny's bar, but that's hard because there's very little evidence that isn't lacking context or completion or both. And last, we're going to bring you evidence from after, and we're going to show you that Miss Marks simply didn't make the responsible decision. And so I'm going to come before you again today at the end of the trial, and I'm going to ask you to find the defendant not liable in the death of Jessica Marks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Hara. Plaintiff's counsel, would you like to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Morgan Levin.
Morgan Levin?
May we proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, please do.
Good afternoon, Ms. Levin.
Good afternoon.
I want to start with some questions about Jessica Marks. How do you know her?
Well, Jessica and I have been friends forever. I met her in middle school and we did everything together. She was there for my first boyfriend, when we took the SATs together, when we got our driver's licenses. She was always there.
Ms. Levin, I want to ask you some questions about March 24th. Where were you that night?
Oh, Jessica was with me. She was visiting for spring break. We hadn't seen each other in a bit, and we decided to go to a bar, Sunny's rooftop bar.
Once you got there, what'd you do?
Well, at first we didn't order anything. We just went upstairs, talked for a bit, caught up about our lives, and then we started ordering some food and then some drinks.
And both you and Jessica drank?
Yes, we did that.
Well, can you describe how Jessica got throughout the night?
Well, as the night went on, Jessica got more and more drunk. As the bartenders would serve more drinks, Jessica would get more and more intoxicated. She was getting louder, slurring her words, not making sense.
Well, did the bartenders ever notice this?
I think they did. When we were leaving the bar, Jessica actually stumbled. She fell a little bit, and Sunny was right there. That's when Sunny said, "We better cut this one off."
I want to go back a little, Miss Levin. Who's Sunny?
Sunny, that's the owner of the bar. She was the one serving us that night.
And as you became more intoxicated, Miss Marks ever have a conversation about who would be driving that night?
Yes, we did. That's actually when the bartender from the bar, Sunny, came up to our table and served us a drink again and said, "I hope this one isn't driving home that night."
Was she talking to a specific one of you?
Well, I'm pretty sure she was talking to Jessica. She was looking at Jessica, pointing at Jessica, and, interacting with Jessica that night.
Well, I want to talk about when you left that night. What's the last drink that you had?
Well, after Jessica stumbled on the stairs, we were about ready to leave when we both got a green tea shot.
What'd you do after that?
After that, I got into my Uber, and that's when Jessica got into her car.
What happened next?
Well, my Uber was actually following her car, and I was scrolling on my phone, sitting in the back, and that's when I looked up and I saw her car. It was veering off, and I thought she would be able to fix it, but it kept veering off, and suddenly her car it fell into the ravine. Everything happened so fast.
Thank you, Miss Levin. Your Honor, no further questions.
Mr. O'Hara, do you have a cross-examination here?
I do, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Miss Levin.
Good afternoon.
First, I'd like to briefly touch on the emotion that drives this case. Very shortly after Jessica's death, you got a call from her mom, Ethel Marks, right?
Yes, I did.
In that call, Mrs. Marks threatened to sue you.
Well, yes, she did, but she never followed up on it. I mean, her daughter had just died. I assume her emotions were all over the place.
Right, well, regardless of what you assume, you would agree that you didn't want to get sued.
Well, I had just lost my best friend. That was hardly the thing I was looking forward to.
You'd agree with me, though, that no one wants to get sued.
Yes, that's correct.
And now you're testifying on behalf of the plaintiff, Mrs. Marks, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you're not getting sued anymore.
Well, not, no, she
Objection,
hasn't sued me yet.
Executive.
Mr. Patel, did you have an objection or something?
Yes, Your Honor. That Mr. O'Hara's question calls for speculation.
Would you like to explain that?
Yes, Your Honor. Though Miss Levin isn't being sued right now, and she knows that, she has no idea of whether she will be sued in the future.
Mr. O'Hara, what was your question again?
My question was, you're not getting sued anymore.
I'm going to sustain the objection, Mr. O'Hara. I think you can rephrase the question.
Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Marks dropped the suit that she originally brought against you. Is that correct?
I don't think she ever actually brought a suit against me. She just said she was, but yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, moving on to the evidence, it's your testimony that at the end of the night on March 24th, Miss Marks was more intoxicated than you.
Yes, she was. She had had more to drink, and she had been served more drinks than I had.
Do you feel responsible for Miss Marks's death?
Sometimes, yes, I do. I mean, Jessica was my best friend. She was just there for spring break, and I really miss her.
Miss Levin, you had trouble talking about this during your deposition, so if you need to take a break, just let me know. But after leaving the bar on the 24th, you spoke to a police officer named Sammy Gaskins.
Yes, that's correct.
Your Honor, permission to screen share Exhibit 23. It's been pre-admitted into evidence.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I apologize, Your Honor. As I mentioned, my second chair isn't here at the moment. Does that look like the automobile police report of Officer Sammy Gaskins?
Yes, it does. It does.
Officer Gaskins, when he asked you some questions, you lied to him.
Well, I mean, my best friend's car just flipped into a ravine. I didn't really know what to do.
So you lied to a police officer?
I told him the truth moments later, but I was a little all over the place.
Did you tell him the truth? Because at first you told him that you hadn't had any drinks that night, neither you nor Jessica, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then you told him that Jessica only had about 3 drinks that night. Is that correct?
That's correct. In that moment, I couldn't recall how many, so I did tell the officer that she had a few.
That was about 20 minutes after the night. And at that point, you claim it was your true belief that she only had 3 drinks?
Oh, yes, that's what I said.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, Ms. Levin, when confronted with the possibility, or when around 11:22, you took a photo or a video rather of Miss Marks. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Miss Meta wasn't around when you took that video.
Not that I can recall, no. She must have been serving other customers on the rooftop.
You didn't intend for Miss Meta to ever see that video.
No, I didn't.
You intended for that video to be shown to Jessica's friends.
Yes, that's correct.
She wanted to put it on her social media,
Yes, that's right.
right? And you also took some photos that night, but looking at the metadata from your phone, there are at least 6 photos that are from that night that have been deleted. Is that correct?
That's what it looks like. Yes, I can't remember if I deleted them.
You have no idea what any of those photos contain.
No, I'm not quite sure.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions, Miss Mehta. Or Miss Levin, I apologize.
Mr. Patel, do you have a redirect?
I do, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Miss Levin, when you talked to the officer after Jessica's car had crashed, why did you tell him that you'd only had 3 drinks?
Well, I just seen Jessica's car flip into a ravine. I mean, I didn't really know what to do, and I couldn't exactly remember how many drinks she had had that night. I was more worried about Jessica and if she was going to be okay.
Thank you, Miss Levin. Your Honor, no further questions.
May this witness be excused?
If there's no recross, Your Honor, then yes.
Mr. O'Hara, do you have a recross?
No recross, Your Honor. This witness may be excused.
Ms. Levin, you may be excused. Does the plaintiff have anything further?
No, Your Honor, the plaintiff rests.
All right, Mr. O'Hara, would you like to call your witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Sunny Mehta to the stand.
Sunny Mehta. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Miss Mehta.
Good afternoon.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I'm a businesswoman around the valley, but the reason I'm here today is because of one of my specific restaurants, Sunny's Rooftop Bar. I own the place, as you can probably tell by the name.
That would make sense. Were you licensed to run that bar?
I was, yes, of course.
And to get that license, did you go through any training?
Yes, I took a training course that's required by the state of California. During that training course, I just learned how to responsibly sell alcohol.
All right. And when did you first meet Jessica Marks?
I met her first, and the only time I met her was March 24th of 2019.
Okay. Miss Mehta, have you been listening in the courtroom to testimony today?
Yes, of course.
You heard what Miss Levin had to say about Miss Marks' state that night.
Yes, I did.
When you were talking to Miss Marks, could you understand her when she talked to you?
Yes, I had no problem understanding her. She was speaking just fine.
Did you notice if she had any red eyes while talking to you?
No, and I'm on the lookout for those things as a bartender. I didn't see anything like that.
Was she slurring her words at all when she was placing her orders?
No, not even a little bit. I wasn't worried at all.
Okay, and what about Miss Morgan Levin? What did you see any symptoms from her that would suggest intoxication?
Yes, Morgan Levin was a different story. I thought Jessica Marks was just fine. Morgan Levin did seem to be feeling the effects of the alcohol, though. Her eyes were a bit red. She looked a little bit sleepy, and I think she probably stumbled over her words once. It wasn't enough for me to cut her off. I didn't feel that she was drunk, but I could tell that she was buzzed or feeling the effects.
Right, so if the symptoms had been there enough for you to decide that she was intoxicated, would you have cut him off?
Absolutely, right away. I've been trained by the state of California, as well as just my experience as a bartender. I wouldn't want anybody over drinking. It can lead to terrible things happening, people getting hurt. So I'm always trying to be extra careful when it comes to things like that. And I would have cut them off right away.
Right, and how many symptoms did you get to see Miss Marks? How many times did you get to see Miss Marks that night?
Well, I was the server on the floor that night, and one of my best friends, who's also my barkeep, Frankfurt Johnson, was downstairs. It was just the two of us, so I was serving everybody. So I'd take their orders and go back and deliver their orders. They had about 5 rounds, so that makes 10 interactions.
Okay. Did you ever see, I'd like to get this out of the way. Did Miss Marks ever stumble into you on the stairs?
No, I didn't see anything like that happen. I watched her walk down the stairs and she was perfectly fine. I don't know what Miss Levin was talking about when she said that.
Okay. And speaking of Miss Levin, when she herself was walking down the stairs, did she seem as fine to you?
No, again, she was a different story. I saw her walking down the stairs while they were leaving the bar, and she was several steps behind Jessica. She was moving really slowly, and she didn't seem sober. But considering they were leaving, I didn't worry about it because I knew that Miss Marks would be the one driving.
How did you know that Miss Marks would be the one driving?
Well, so up on the rooftop, I was taking their order and I noticed some of those signs on Miss Levin. Again, not drunk, but definitely feeling the effects of the alcohol. So I nudged my head towards Miss Levin. I said, "This one's not driving, right?" Talking about Morgan. And Jessica said, "No way, I'm driving." And I was glad. Jessica seemed fine and Morgan didn't. So I thought that that was the right situation.
Okay. Your Honor, permission to screen share Exhibit 23. It's the one that's been pre-admitted. You're muted, Your Honor.
Sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Ms. Mehta, do you remember speaking to an officer after Jessica's death?
Absolutely, yes. Officer Gaskins.
All right. And can you just scan this section of Officer Gaskins' report? Is there anything in this report that you don't stand by 100%?
I mean, this
Just
second
about-
section, pardon, what was that?
I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wasn't sure if you'd heard me. My question was, is there anything in this report that suggests that you told anything other than the full truth to Officer Gaskins?
No, I feel that I gave a pretty good representation of that night. It says there on the second paragraph that I said that she was a typical buzz girl. I certainly don't believe that I meant Jessica Marks. I do think that Morgan Levin was buzzed, like I said, plenty of times, and Jessica seemed fine to me.
Okay, that's great. Now, Your Honor, I'd like to screen share Exhibit 22, which has also been pre-admitted.
Yes, go ahead.
Shows that blood was drawn from Miss Marks, and it was 0.6 grams of blood. Is it possible for someone like that to not show symptoms of obvious intoxication?
I believe that absolutely it is. Although it may sound a bit weird, you never know how alcohol will affect the body. Jessica was small, but I didn't know her tolerance or what she'd had to eat that day. You see, there's so many different factors that I can't go on their tab alone. I just have to observe them. And what I observed was maybe a girl who had had a few drinks, but not a girl who was drunk.
Okay, thank you for your testimony, Ms. Mehta. That's no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. O'Hara. Mr. Patel, do you have cross-examination?
I do, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Ms. Mehta, you mentioned on direct examination your certification. You're certified by the Responsible Beverage Service Corps, correct?
Yes, as the state of California requires.
And it teaches you to scan for the signs of intoxication. Am I right?
Yes, as well as many other things.
That's right. Many other things, such as that you can't serve minors. Am I correct?
Absolutely, and we do our best at Sunny's not to. I'm unsure what happened on March 24th that led to Jessica Marks being served, but we do everything in our power to avoid that.
Well, I want to make something clear. The reason you can't serve minors is because it's illegal, right?
Yes, however, oftentimes minors have fake IDs, which is also illegal. It's difficult to regulate all of that as a bartender, but as I said, I do my best and I train my bartenders to do their best as well.
But Miss Mehta, you don't know any other reasons why you shouldn't serve minors, do you?
It's illegal and I guess they just are kids and they don't really know what to do and how alcohol affects them. But I'd say that serving underage people is illegal. That's the biggest reason I can think of.
Okay, Miss Mehta, I want to make something clear. When you checked Jessica Marks' ID the night of March 20th, right?
You cut out just a little bit. I'm not sure where the feedback is coming from, but I couldn't hear your question. I'm sorry, sir.
Yes, Mr. Patel, we lost you for a few minutes. So can you repeat the question?
Yes, Your Honor. Miss Mehta, the night of March 24th, you checked Jessica Marks' ID, right?
I feel that I must have. I don't specifically remember seeing it, but I checked every ID by hand that night because our ID scanners were broken.
And that ID was a fake, right?
I don't remember checking her ID, considering I know now that she's 19, it must have been. I don't remember seeing a fake because I wouldn't have served if I knew that it was a fake. But
Okay.
I
Miss
must
Mehta,
have
I
seen
actually
that.
want to talk about that. Do you think you could flip to that fake ID in your virtual exhibit booklet?
Yes,
You want
absolutely.
permission to screen share the exhibit?
What exhibit number is that?
Number 3, Your Honor.
Does defense have any problem here?
As long as it's constructively outside the view of the jury until it's been moved into evidence, there's no objection.
Okay.
Miss Mehta, this is a picture of Miss Marks' fake ID. Is that correct?
Correct. I recognize the picture as being Jessica, but not the ID itself. I hadn't seen it before my deposition.
And it's fair and accurate?
From what I saw in my deposition, yes, absolutely. It's clearly fake.
Your Honor, the plaintiff moves Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Mr. O'Hara, do you have an objection?
Yes, Your Honor, to hearsay.
Can you explain that to me?
Your Honor, this is an out-of-court statement and it's not admissible. A lot of the information on it doesn't fall under hearsay exceptions as far as the defense is aware.
Your Honor, may I respond? The information on this exhibit is being offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. In fact, we assert that all the information on this is fake. In fact, I want to ask Ms. Mehta some questions about what's not on it. It's admissible.
Mr. O'Hara, do you have any further response?
Your Honor, our only response would be that we request a limiting instruction on the information on this ID card, that it not be used for the truth of the matter asserted, if that's the argument that opposing counsel is going to make.
Your Honor, none of the information on this card will be used.
All right, I think this is a question for the jury. If we are not admitting this for the truth of the matter of the document itself, I'm going to go ahead and let it in on a limited basis. So, Mr. Patel, let's hear your questions.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Mehta, this ID doesn't list height, does it?
No, it's clearly fake. It doesn't have any of the usual listings, I guess you could call them. And it doesn't have holograms either.
height is something that you'd expect to see on a legitimate identification?
Yes, I'd expect to see height, eye color, weight, hair color, holograms, anything like that. This ID is clearly fake. And like I said, I don't remember seeing it on March 24th.
Well,
Objection, Your Honor, to relevance.
Your Honor, this ID goes to Miss Meta's knowledge of whether or not she knew Jessica Marks was a minor. It's as well as the fact that relevance is a very low bar.
Any response, Mr. O'Hara?
Yes. First, whether or not this witness, the California Dram Shop Act has no part that considers whether the defendant did in fact know that the person who they were serving the alcohol to was a minor. So that's not a material part of the charge today. And second, though there is a low bar for relevance, we agree, we don't see how this would meet that bar.
May I respond, Your Honor?
One more response, yes.
Your Honor, whether or not this Miss Meta had the knowledge that Jessica Marks was a minor goes to Miss Meta's credibility as a bar owner.
All right. I am going to continue to let this in for a limited basis. This is a factual situation for the jury. Ms. Meta has testified, in fact, that she doesn't remember seeing this and that looking at it now, she would identify it as not being an actual official ID. So I think these are considerations that the jury needs to make. So I'm going to let it in for the limited purpose.
Yes, Your Honor. Miss Meta, this ID is an obvious fake. Do I have that right?
Yeah, like I said plenty of times, it's obviously fake, and I would have remembered a fake this obvious, I think. I don't remember seeing this on March 24th.
But Miss Meta, you must have seen this ID on March 24th. Do I have that right?
I must have checked her ID. I don't know if maybe she tried handing me her real one in hopes that I wouldn't know, or if she had multiple fake IDs. I don't know, but all I do know is that I must have checked and that I didn't see this one.
Okay, Miss Meta, I want to move on to what happened to Jessica Marks after she left your bar. Now,
Pardon.
Mr. Burgess, can we get Exhibit 23 up on the screen? Or, Your Honor, permission to screen share first.
Yes, go ahead.
My apologies. Now, Miss Meta, at the time of her death, Jessica Marks had a BAC of 0.16. Do I have that right?
Yes, 0.16, that's double the legal limit.
It's double the legal limit for an adult, right?
Right, and as far as I knew, she was an adult. I didn't know
Right.
she was underage.
Excuse me. That's right. You said that she's underage. It's actually 16 times the limit for an underage minor, right?
Well, you say it as if 16 times is a big thing, when really the limit for a minor is just if you blow anything into a breathalyzer, then that is illegal. And it's not that the 16 times is quite large of an amount. It's simply that the limit for a minor is essentially 0.
Miss Meta, the blood alcohol content that Miss Marks had at her time of death would have made her unfit to drive. Fair to say.
Under the law, yes, absolutely.
Actually, Miss Meta, not just under the law, you'd consider 0.16 BAC to be too uncoordinated to drive, wouldn't you?
I'd say that it depends on how the person reacts to alcohol. I mean, certainly you can have this blood alcohol content and fall down drunk, or you could be fine. It depends on the person and it depends on the situation.
Ms. Meta, is it your testimony that a blood alcohol content that's twice the legal limit for an adult would be fine driving?
No, absolutely not. And as I stated before, it would not be okay under the law, and that is what matters. All I'm saying is that that doesn't necessarily mean that the person is uncoordinated. It does mean that it's illegal, and that's what matters.
Thank you, Ms. Mehta. Your Honor, no further questions.
Anything further, Mr. O'Hara?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Mehta, is there any way, with any training you've received, that you could have known exactly what Miss Marks's BAC was when she left Sunny's rooftop bar?
I've had so many years of the training. I get recertified every year, and I had no idea what her blood alcohol content was. I've said it before and I'll say it again. She didn't exhibit signs of obvious intoxication. Not once.
If someone doesn't exhibit signs, is it your duty to cut them off?
No, there's nothing I can do if I don't see the problem. And I wish that I could have helped Miss Marks, but I didn't see any problem present.
Thank you, Ms. Mehta. No further questions, Your Honor. Barring recross, may this witness be excused?
Mr. Patel, do you have any recross?
No, Your Honor.
Yes, Ms. Maida may be excused. Mr. O'Hara, do you have anything further?
No, Your Honor. At this time, the defense rests.
I think we can proceed to closing statements. Mr. Patel, the floor is yours when you're ready to go.
Card, some words, and a flight of stairs. It's all it takes for Sunny Mehta to know that Jessica Marks shouldn't be served. Ladies and gentlemen, when a minor walks into a bar, there's a reason they shouldn't be served. They're too young, too brash, and too irresponsible to be intoxicated. Because when somebody's intoxicated, who's irresponsible, they're not only a danger to themselves, they're a danger to the people around them. Sunny Mehta knew that, but she just didn't care. And she should have. Because in California, if an obviously intoxicated minor is served alcohol, and that alcohol is a substantial factor in her death, the bar that served her can be found liable. So let's see how we prove those things in today's case. Let's go all the way back to when Jessica Marks arrived at 9 p.m. at Sunny's rooftop bar. She gave a fake ID to Sunny Mehta, one that Sunny Mehta said on stand today she's sure she must have checked. And that ID didn't have height, didn't have weight, didn't have eye color, didn't have any holograms, that it was an obvious fake. But Sunny Mehta still served her. Even though she told us on stand today she knew that serving a minor was illegal, but they were just kids. Became drunk. She was so drunk that she was slurring her words. We heard from Morgan Levin today that Sunny Mehta noticed this. When Jessica Marks wanted to order another drink, Sunny Mehta told her, "Hold this one not dry." Oh, pointing at Jessica Marks. She still served her. She continued to serve her until she was stumbling down the stairs. Stumbled right in front of Sunny Mehta. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, it was her fake ID card. It was her slurred words. It was her fall down the stairs that showed Sunny Mehta that Jessica Marks wasn't fit to be served. Now, Mr. O'Hara came up here today and told us that there was a gap, that there was a bridge in the story, and that the story actually started in Pennsylvania with Miss Marks' mom in that Miss Ethel Marks influenced Morgan Levin. And all that's based on a single thing that Morgan Levin changed. Jessica Marks, instead of drinking 3 drinks, drinks 6. But if you remember back today, Sonny Mehta had just watched her best friend die. She was being questioned by a police officer, and she knew she was culpable of getting alcohol as a minor. Her state of mind wasn't stable enough to actually know what happened that night. It's completely reasonable that she accidentally give a wrong answer. She told us on stand today, her best friend had just died. She didn't know what to think. That's why I'd ask that you find Sonny's rooftop bar liable.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Mr. O'Hara, do you have a closing argument?
Yes, I do, Your Honor. Before I begin, though, I'm going to be screen sharing a demonstrative and a demonstrative during my closing argument. Can I just ask for permission to do this so now, and rather than asking while I'm in my closing argument?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And as a reminder, I don't have a second chair today, so I apologize if I look down. That's what I'm doing. Actually, one more second. I need to get set up. I think I misplaced my audio device.
Whenever you are ready.
I apologize for that brief interruption, Your Honor. A suit based on evidence, not emotion. That's what we needed today. But instead, we got a suit based on emotion and not on evidence. Now, what we just heard in the past hour of testimony has been a lot of emotion. It's hard not to feel compelled by that emotion when you hear a tragic story like the one we have on our hands today. But in terms of evidence, we need to look at what evidence we actually saw, the uncontestable, clear-cut evidence. And that's in shorter demand than you might realize, because a lot of the testimony we just heard, unfortunately, just doesn't cut the bar, or it doesn't make the cut for being clear-cut evidence. You heard from Miss Levin, Mr. Levin rather, that there was a lot of different things going on that day. First, can you see my screen, Your Honor?
I cannot at the moment, no.
And now, Your Honor?
I see your exhibit, yes.
Excellent. So first, you heard, wait, can you see my video though? I apologize, technical issues. I believe that it's impossible for me to screen share while having video. I'll move on, Your Honor. We heard from Miss Mehta, that Mr. Levin rather, that essentially he lied. She lied to Officer Gaskins, and she wasn't truthful with her testimony to him. And even now, the testimony that she gave was that her incompatible testimony then of saying that Miss Marks had 3 drinks was her justified true belief. And if that's true, then why are we trusting her now, years later, after the fact, when she says, no, it wasn't 3, it was 6. That's not clear cut. She also wasn't sober that night. You heard that she was buzzed and stumbling around. And we'll be frank, we'll admit that our witness, Miss Mehta, is biased. It's impossible for a defendant not to be. But Miss Levin was as well, because she didn't want to be sued by the plaintiff, Ethel Marks. Now, something you have to understand today is the idea of code switching. We can take down the demonstrative for now. The idea of code switching is that if you are acting one way with someone, that doesn't mean you're acting the same way with someone else. And that's exactly what was happening today. You heard testimony that Miss Marks knew how to drink. It wasn't her first time drinking. She had a tolerance. That tolerance led her to pass as close to sober because there were only a few relatively short interactions with the server in which she was able to maintain a guise. That guise was relatively sober because she knew that she was in that bar illegally. She didn't want to stick out to her server, so naturally, she was inconspicuous around the server. Near her best friend, though, she was much more lively. Now let's move on to our affirmative defense today. Now with this affirmative defense, we took on our own burden. You might remember we have to prove to you that it's more likely than not that Jessica Marks failed to use reasonable care to prevent harm to herself, and that failure to use reasonable care to prevent harm to herself was a proximate cause of her own harm. That much is obvious. Exhibit 23 was pre-admitted, and we know that Officer Gaskins concluded that it was due to the amount that Jessica Marks chose to drink that she crashed her car. Next, we have to prove negligence, whether Miss Marks was negligent. And to do that, there's a lot we can look at, but we can just look at the path of her actions. First, we see that she entered the bar illegally. That in itself is a negligent act. It's showing that she's putting something else above her own safety, because those laws, as Ms. Patel made clear on the cross-examination, they're there for a reason, to protect the minors. Next, she drove herself. She took her own car and she went driving intending to drink. Next, she took her own keys. And we can hit the next button to reveal the check marks. Thank you. Next, she took her own keys. She used those keys she took those keys with her into the bar. She kept those keys with her throughout the night, and she's used those keys at the end to drive herself home. She was drinking, intending to drive. And last, she was given a final extension of the hand, a final chance to make a responsible decision and take reasonable care for her own health. And that was Miss Levin rather, offering her an Uber. But she turned that down. That was her decision. Say what you will about the bar. Turning down the Uber was Miss Marks's decision. And if she hadn't made it, in all likelihood, she would still be alive today. Now that was really difficult to say, and we can take down the demonstrative. Thank you very much, Mr. Matthew. That was very difficult to say because we are always taught from when we're very young, don't speak ill of the dead. And we're not. We don't want to make it seem that way. But the truth is we have to consider everyone's actions, everyone's choices, because those choices have consequences. And we can't let our simple instinct, emotion, drive our decisions. If you look at your jury's instructions, you'll see that they instruct you to make your decisions without sympathy or prejudice. Common sense. And that's what we're going to have to ask you to do. It's a very hard thing to do. It's against our nature, but it's something we have to do to make sure that justice is done. So please, realize that this suit is based on emotion, that they did not bring the evidence, that all they brought was the emotion, that they have failed to meet their burden, and find the defendant, Sonny's Rooftop Bar, not liable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Hara. Mr. Patel, do you have a rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor. I want to address two things that Ms. O'Hara said during his closing. First, that we haven't brought any evidence. And second, that Ms. Marks' death was caused by her own negligence. Let's go to that first one. What evidence have we brought today? card, some words, and a flight of stairs. We heard that that card was obviously fake, that it was missing hair color, eye color, height, weight, and that Miss Meta knew that that card was fake. She either checked that card or she didn't. She didn't check because on stand today, Miss Meta says she's not sure if she really checked that card. She's not really sure if she checked the card of somebody who's a minor. That's just not reasonable, Your Honor. We know that Miss Meta did check that card. What she saw was a fake ID. But she didn't care. Jessica Marks got drunk. She slurred her words, and Miss Meta pointed that out. She said, "I hope you're not driving." That's evidence. That's Miss Meta confirming that she knows that Jessica Marks is acting intoxicated. Finally, Miss Marks's fall down the stairs, it can only be concluded in one way. She's drunk, too drunk to even walk down the stairs. Well, let's go to what else Ms. O'Hara said about my argument in closing, that Miss Marks's death was caused by her own negligence. He said that she entered the bar illegally, so it's her fault she died. That she drove away, and it's her fault that she died. And it says she didn't take the Uber, so that's why she died. But I'll remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that two of those things, driving away and not taking the Uber, were done at 11:45. After she had been served drink after drink after drink. Miss Marks couldn't even walk. It's a wonder of how good her judgment was when she made those decisions, because the alcohol was affecting her. It caused her to drive away. It caused her to die. Find Sonny's Rooftop Bar liable.
Thank you, counsel. All right, we have now